Welcome. All right. My name is Sean. I'm an education and career counselor here with Granite Advance. I just want to say welcome to Destination College. Hopefully you get a lot of answers to questions that you have about the college process. I hope you enjoyed our opener. Again, if you're hungry, you need some food, there are some snacks and water available to you outside of the double door. All right, I also want to say a big thank you to St. A's, right? We're on their campus. They welcomed us for this event. So please ask as many questions as you have. We are going to ask that if you do have questions, hold them till the end, right? Let's get through this process. And then if there's anything remaining that you want to know about, we are obviously here to help out, okay? I want to first start by introducing our presenters today. I'm going to ask that they each introduce themselves, their current role, and how long they've been in the biz. We'll start with Jill at the end and work our way to me.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Jill Teeters. I'm the Associate Director of College Counseling at the Derryfield School. I've been there for about 7 years. Prior to that, I worked on the college side, so I've been in the biz a few decades. We're not going to go into the exact number, but I've been around for a bit and really enjoy helping students and families navigate the college admission journey.
Hi, I'm Elizabeth Koifel. I'm the Assistant Vice President for Enrollment and Director of Financial Aid here at St. Anselm College. And I have been at St. A's since 2002, and I've been in financial aid for longer than that. So how does that sound?
That sounds great.
But I also was in the guidance side of the world too. So I did that as well. So.
Hi everyone, my name is Denise Fall and I'm a school counselor at Goffstown High School. Before I was at Goffstown High School, I actually worked for NEEF, which is now called Granite Advance. I know, it's hard to follow. And before that, I was also a school counselor. So I've been doing education counseling for about 16 years now. And I always love coming to this event because I like connecting with the community and answering your questions and helping you guys navigate your future.
Yeah. And it's great to be in a setting like this. You know, I've worked with each of our panelists here on some occasion throughout my career in higher ed as well. But we will jump right in, right, to what we're kind of curious about, our financial aid and scholarships, okay? Just a show of hands, who here is this everyone's first time? If it's your first time through this process, raise your hand.
Oh, good.
All right, great. Okay. I always like to ask, right, because we have gone through a big change in the financial aid process with the FAFSA form over the last year. So I wanted to know who has seen both. Right, so we'll hop into it and we're gonna open it up with financial aid. Elizabeth, I'm just gonna send it over to you. Can you just give a brief definition of what financial aid is?
So there are a brief definition is that financial aid is one of those areas which there are resources for families, basically, is what it is. And it's done in different ways. It's done through institutional merit processes. It's done through the federal government, and it's also offered through outside agencies. So really what it is for when we do financial aid, we're looking at the cost of attendance, and then we're looking at the resources that go to that. So.
Great. Okay, so with us being interested in the academic, the financial piece, we want to make sure that when you are looking at college and you're starting to make those decisions, go to college fairs, you're going to start visiting campuses, you know, maybe during this summer break. We want to make sure that you understand that we want you to pick the best choice academically, but we also want you to keep in mind that financial component. Right? One of the best ways to do that early before filing any of the different financial aid forms is by using a net price calculator. I would say probably every school out there now has some type of net price calculator to where you can get an estimate on your financial aid. Is Liz, anything else that they should be aware of when it comes to a net price calculator?
What you really need to know is that what you put in is what you get out. So the important thing about the net price calculator is that two things. So this year is the first time since 1972 that the Department of Education has changed the formula in the terms of the need analysis. And so the net price calculators that you see right now, if you were to go out and do a net price calculator at St. Anselm, we're still using prior need analysis. We haven't yet done it because we only got the new information from the Department of Education for this cycle about 2 weeks ago. So we're not yet able to put energy into calculating the net price calculator. And so I would say by the time if you were to go out and do the net price calculator in, later in the summer, in the fall, that it will probably be more accurate. But just understand this, it's a behemoth shift in terms of the process from prior year to this year. So that's the thing. But one of the things that you should know is that there are different kinds of net price calculators. There's some schools use a simple federal methodology, and they're giving you basically what your eligibility might be for federal grants, loans. Other schools are a little more sophisticated, and they're going to try to put into the calculus where you might find yourself based on your grades, the students' grades, and their interests, and they try to mirror some of those different pieces. So it's really a place to start, but it's not the end. So I think that's the most important piece for you to know, is this just, it's a way to start to see how it goes. Because I think that one of the things that you don't, like the net price calculator doesn't know, for example, if you're an athlete and if you're looking for scholarships, or it's not going to be able to factor some of those pieces in. So you really need to go through the financial aid process in order to truly get a better sense for how things are.
And the other thing to keep in mind too, you see that last bullet up on the screen, the net price over sticker price. You can go out and look at what a school is going to cost you for one calendar year, right? That's the sticker price. That's what you see. So if I go out and I see a school costs $80,000 and $90,000 a year, that's that sticker price, right? Majority of students that are looking to attend these schools are getting some type of financial aid, whether it be merit aid, right, based on scholarships, or if it's going to be from those federal, the FAFSA form or the CSS profile form if your schools require that, okay? So hopping into different types of financial aid, Jill, can you explain to us a little bit about what gift aid is when it comes to financial aid?
Sure. We love gift aid because gift aid doesn't have to be paid back. So that's the first big difference. These are monies that the college is offering you as a student, and many times they come in the form of merit scholarships. And these are usually something that students are notified about in their admission acceptance letter. So congratulations, you've been accepted, and you're going to be receiving X amount of dollars in this particular scholarship. Many times merit scholarships can be renewable for all 4 years of your time at that college. One of the things that we often encourage our students to do is when you're visiting schools and they're talking about, admission and financial aid, ask if this is a school that offers merit scholarships. Some schools do, not all schools do, so it is good to ask that question. Scholarships can be based on a variety of different factors. It can be academic, athletic, artistic, leadership, community service, etc. And oftentimes you can find more information about merit scholarships right on the admission or financial aid website of the particular college. But when in doubt, ask. It certainly is a great question to ask when you're connecting with a college at the college fair today or when you're visiting campuses. And then there is also need-based grants, which will be determined for the student by the federal methodology. And these, again, are free money based on need, and it would be part of your financial aid package, but you don't have to worry about paying it back.
But I would just add, you need to know that you reapply each year, so your need may change. So the need-based aid could vary from year to year.
Yep. So. And then Denise, could you talk a little bit about the self-help aid, the loans, and the work study?
Absolutely. So when you complete your FAFSA, everybody is awarded a federal a federal loan. So everybody gets something from the FAFSA. It may not be that gift aid that we all are looking for, that is really a gift, but that you do get a student loan from the federal government that is in your student's name. Every year there's a different designation of an amount. It starts out with $5,500, climbs to $6,500, then $7,500 for junior and senior year. Those amounts have not changed for a while, but we'll see what happens down the road. Federal government likes to shake things up from what we're seeing this year. So with those loans, those are loans that do not have to be paid back immediately. As long as your student is enrolled as at least a half-time student, those loans stay on hold. There is interest accrual that does happen and occur. You can keep up on those interest payments. You can make larger payments that do hit that principal balance while they're in school, but know that that's not an absolute need in terms of paying it back. Students are also given a grace period. So when they get their diploma, after they go through their 4 years, they're not then given a bill and expected to start paying right away. They get a 6-month grace period. And in that 6 months, the hope is either that they enroll in a master's degree program or professional degree program, or they're able to take the time to get a job and a career and sort of get their budget settled where they can start to then repay those loans. There are forgiveness options out there, so I would highly recommend that as you're going through that process, you're sort of looking into that so that you know maybe a little bit more of what you're getting into for repayment when they graduate. In terms of the work study is fantastic. I actually had work study when I went to school, and it's a job that you have on campus. And what's nice about a work study job that's different than just a job a student applies for is work study will actually work with the student around their exam schedules and around other parts of their academics to make sure that academics are always first. The work study job is second. But it does provide a nice little paycheck on a weekly or biweekly basis that the student can use either for their own spending or they can put it back toward their tuition payment. I was not a good doobie. I did not put it back towards my tuition. I chose to take the money and buy my groceries, go out to dinner with my friends, and have a little bit of a social life with that little bit of a paycheck. But it was less money that I was having to ask mom and dad for. I didn't have to call home every week and ask for that money because I was earning it on my own through my campus. It also allowed me to make a lot of other connections with students, teachers, and other professionals on the campus. So it was a really great way to not only earn money, but make some connections and become a bigger part of my college community.
And a nice way to use work study is towards your degree, right? If you're looking to be a bio major, maybe there's options in the bio department to do research and use work study towards that. So don't be afraid to pair it with your academic program to get that experience that you can put on your resume when you start searching for jobs. Okay.
There's also a college payroll funding. So there's two different prongs for most places. So they have the institutional dollars that they use for student employment, and then there's also federal dollars. The federal dollars that are done through the federal work study, it's a grant. Basically, it's a block grant that goes to the institution, and then the institution has to follow a set of rules to make sure that students who are able to and they land the job are then able to pay. So that's, there's a whole number of different pieces in there having to do with community service, teachings in the school system. There's like literacy programs that you can use federal work study dollars for. So different schools do a whole variety of different things with work. But they also have grants that students use for employment. We have Embry grants for students who are doing research, and they get paid. There's all sorts of different resources that are available. So if you don't qualify for need-based work study, because it's need-based, there are other tools that are available so that you can help defray your costs.
So now, as you see on the board, right, financial aid forms, there's two big ones, okay? The FAFSA that we've just kind of explained, it is required to determine that need-based aid, right? That aid based on demonstrated need. The FAFSA is free to file. When we sit down with families, we walk through a FAFSA, we schedule an hour appointment, right? To sit down with you, go through that. I do think, I'm sure when you're preparing for, senior year, you look at the news, you see the news that's going on with the FAFSA, and it can be a little stressful. It can be a little anxiety ridden, right? We want you to know that I do think that this is a good form, but I think we're just not there yet, right? I think when you guys are starting to do that form, it's going to be a much cleaner form. Typically, your FAFSA form opens October 1st. As far as I am aware, Elizabeth, we will go back to that October 1st deadline. We'll leave it as a TBD for now, but hopeful
so.
that that is the case. Okay, and you must file it, as we've already mentioned, each year that the student is looking for that need-based aid. Okay. I am going to say, Elizabeth, could you talk a little bit about that CSS profile, since saying A's, I know they did require it this year?
Yeah. So the CSS profile is it's an application which many colleges use that helps them to understand. Sometimes, in our case, we did it because the Department of Education was a little slow on the uptake this year. So we used the CSS profile so we could get out estimated offers to families. But it allows you to create an institutional it allows you to use institutional aid, basically. It creates equity in the institutional aid process. And so there are more questions that are asked in the CSS profile. There's a fee that's associated with it for families who earn above $125,000 a year. But the idea of it is that it allows schools to create some equity in the process. So they'll ask more questions about assets. They'll ask about a custodial, well, now they don't. Anyway, the federal government calls them different contributors. But the people who are contributing, both parents, and if they're divorced, the parent who is not living with the child, that all those different questions are asked on the CSS profile.
Yeah. As you can see, right, about 300 schools require that CSS profile. A lot of times we get questions, well, Sean, can I do the CSS profile even if it's not on the school list? I would say no. Okay, don't waste your time going through that CSS profile, because it will take you much longer to complete than the FAFSA will. And the only people that are going to look at it are the ones that require it. Okay, I'm going to turn it over to Jill and Denise. Both of you, whichever one wants to answer, can you explain a little bit about timelines for these forms? If they're applying regular admission, if they're applying early decision, early action, are there deadlines that they have to meet for financial aid to complement those applications?
There are deadlines.
There's always a
Absolutely.
deadline.
There's
now, is
always
it the
a
same deadline? It's never the same deadline because they can't make it easy.
Right.
But yes, and what I tend to tell my students is, one, always look at the school website. You go into that financial aid section. It's going to have all of that information. Schools aren't trying to be tricky. They're not trying to hide it from anyone. But sometimes it does take a little bit of digging to find out all the details that you are looking for. So I tend to say, if you magically can't find a deadline, match it up with one of your school deadlines. So if you've got applications due in November, your financial aid application should also be done that same time frame. That way, everything's getting done in a timely fashion. Schools are getting things at about the same time frame. So then that way, nothing's going to get held up because of a signature or whatever other pieces may be floating around out there.
Yeah, I think, deadlines are probably one of the biggest pieces of the college journey, both on the admission and financial aid side. And I think, many times in our schools, sometimes deadlines are flexible or you get extensions on work. That doesn't happen in the admission and financial aid experience. So keeping track of your application deadlines and your financial aid deadlines are super important, because you don't want to miss out on the opportunity to be admitted to a school that you're excited about or to get the maximum financial aid package that you could qualify for.
And we'll talk about this towards the later half of our presentation. But the other really good thing about getting that FAFSA done as early as possible is because if you start that scholarship search in December, January, you're most likely going to need the information from the FAFSA to do those scholarship applications. A lot of scholarships ask for the information on your FAFSA, right? So doing it nice and early allows you to be prepared when you are filling out those outside scholarships and looking for additional money to fund your education. Okay. So student aid index, okay? You can kind of see here the goal of the FAFSA form, using all of the information that's provided in this form, is to figure out what a student's student aid index is. Okay, that number is what a school is going to use to determine a student's financial aid eligibility. Can you explain to us, Elizabeth, how a student or how a school may receive that information, the process for them?
I'm going to talk about in an ideal situation. This is what happens. You fill out the form. It goes into a central processor, and within about 2 to 3 working days, it comes into our system. And then we take that information and we match up with the cost. You would indicate you're going to be a resident or you're a commuter, so you're looking at a different budget, and then we take the information that comes in with the student aid index, and then you're looking at the cost of attendance, and you subtract out the student aid index, and you're left with something called demonstrated need. Now, this is not parent's definition. I want to say this. This is not a parent definition. Need is cost for you. But the Department of Education has this definition, and it's really just what I said. It's math. Cost of attendance minus the student aid index. The thing that you need to know, if you've done this before, is that the number in college is not a factor in the student aid index. So if you've done this before, you would have said, oh, well, these are the number in family, these are the number in college. Not so much anymore at all. So what they're doing is that they have a whole different calculation, and then so you take the resources. So students are offered, let's say, a merit scholarship that Jill just talked about, or need-based aid, and so we take the need and we fill it up with the resources that have been offered to the student. So whether that's the merit scholarship or other special scholarships, we put those into the mix, and then you're left with eligibility for need-based self-help, federal work study, subsidy on a direct loan, that sort of thing. And so that's really the way it is designed. And I'm really not going to get into the weeds of how it goes, but because you don't really want my job. So I just got to say that out loud. I know you don't, especially this year. But it's the idea of the student aid index and the change. As I said, they changed everything up from how it used to be done, really, since 1972 is basically the same way, with just add-ons as they kept on going. And now they've tried to simplify it, and they're basing it on percentage of where your family income is, the number who are in the family, from a federal perspective, noting who gets put onto the tax return in terms of the dependents, who's in the family, and then where they fall in a sequence according to the poverty level, according to different groups. So the number, when there's an increase in the number in the family, the income could be quite higher, a lot higher, and then students would still be eligible for Pell, less so the other way around. So they've taken a number of pieces out of the puzzle, and they've tried to simplify it. In theory, by next year, it will be clean, maybe. It hasn't been really clean this year. So they dropped the ICERs for the first time 2 weeks ago. 6 million ICERs dropped from the Department of Education to all the colleges and universities in the United States. So it's made it to be an interesting scramble. So if you've watched the news, you know that it's somewhat chaotic. So people who, let's say, did their FAFSA in January weren't able to go in and change anything. In fact, they still can't go in and make a correction in April. So it's created some stress. But by the time you all are in the game, I'm sure it'll be fine.
It will be.
It will be.
I'm throwing those positive vibes out there. Yep. All right. The other thing to keep in mind, I mentioned outside scholarships, right? That they will need your information. What those outside scholarships are looking for is that student aid index, right? So they'll ask what demonstrated need is. That would be that SAI. Okay.
No, that's not demonstrated need.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Student aid index is the calculation based on the need analysis.
Right.
But demonstrated need is the cost less the SAI. Yeah. Just had to say that.
Yeah. All right. So we have, when we go through our presentations, our FAFSA presentations, we always have these myths, all right? And we're going to go through them kind of one by one. Elizabeth, I'm going to start with you. For a family who says, we make too much money, we won't qualify for any aid, what would you say to that family?
How do you know? How do you know? So I think that the important thing to do is to go through the process, because there's a lot of non-need-based aid that's available. And if you don't go through the process, you really don't know. And so that's the important piece of information. Whether you as a family choose to use the self-help aid or anything else, that's your choice. But don't opt out until you know what you got.
Yeah. I always recommend doing it for that first year, right? If you are looking to understand everything that you're eligible for, great. Do the FAFSA form for 1 year. As I said, if it's worth having access to that loan, or maybe you get an additional grant from a school, that $1,000 grant or that grant that you receive is worth the half hour to an hour it takes to fill out your FAFSA form. Okay. Second myth, FAFSA only needs to be completed once. We've already covered this, right? You can do it that first year to see what you're eligible for, but you should be doing it every single year that you're in school.
But I'm going to say something about this. So y'all are living at home with your folks. Everything is like very much family. When they become students, you got to remember that you as the student are the schools will communicate with you as the student. So the number one thing that parents get upset about is when you don't pay attention to communications that come from key players at a college. I'm talking about the dean, financial aid, the bursar's office. These are like a lot of times students don't look at emails and think, this is not for me, I don't really care. You have to learn how to differentiate what is spam and what is essential. And so parents get freaked out when you don't pay attention. So just thought I'd share that.
All right. Myth number 3. Jill, this is coming to you. If I put my parents on my FAFSA, they are required to pay for my education.
Well, wouldn't that be nice? Obviously, we're hoping that families are having conversations about the investment in a college education. The FAFSA, you do need to provide your parental information. It is not a signed in blood contract that your parents will be paying everything that you want them to pay for you to go to school. So you want to do the FAFSA, have that information, as Elizabeth said, so you know where you stand. And then as a family, once you've been admitted to each of your schools and have your financial aid packages, you need to all have a discussion about what's the best academic and financial choice for your family.
So one of the things that's really different about the way that they've designed the FAFSA now is that the student asks the parent to go through as a contributor. That's their language, contributor. So that's where it gets a little confusing. And you have to authorize your data to go to the IRS and pull the IRS data into the system. And so if you do not authorize that, you do not get financial aid. I just need to say that. It is different. It is different than than it's been before. So you have to acknowledge and authorize it. So you as the student. So if your parents are married, you just send it to one. Otherwise, you would send it to the parent who contributes the most to the family, not where you live the most. Anyway, it's whoever contributes the most. That's who is supposed to be, and they complete the form. And then there are all sorts of different iterations about if you fall out of those. There are the unusual circumstances, things that happen to students, and they would put the student as an independent student and a variety of different things, and schools will work individually with them on that.
Liz, I'm coming back to you. You mentioned it a little bit, but myth number 4, my parents are divorced. Both of them need to be included on my FAFSA.
No, it's the parent who contributes the most is the parent who is the parent who is on there. And if your parents are not married but live together, then both parents go onto the form as contributors. So you don't have to be married to be the contributor. So that's a piece that.
Denise, I'm coming to you. Myth number 5, I'm 18 years old, so my parents do not need to be included on my FAFSA form.
Ooh, yeah, you can sign some school stuff when you're 18, but that's about it. You can go buy a lottery ticket. That's about it. Your parents do need to be on the FAFSA. The federal government, when it comes to education and loans and all those things, don't consider you to really be an adult until you're like 24 years old. Then at that point, if you're doing FAFSA, going on to professional degrees and things like that, you can leave mom and dad off. But in terms of anything undergrad-wise, mom and dad need to be included. Or mom or dad or the contributor, whatever language we're using, they need to be on there.
The other thing to keep in mind when it comes to that, there are a set of questions on the FAFSA form that will ask you your circumstances, right? If you are in a legal guardianship, if you are an emancipated minor, if you, since the age of 13, have been an orphan in foster care, things along those lines. So if those questions are all marked no, in the sense of the FAFSA form, you are a dependent student, meaning you would need to add contributor information. If you marked yes to one of those, you would have to provide proof, right, documentation to the school when they ask for it, to review it, to make sure, and in that case, you would be deemed an independent student as long as it's verified. All right, and then the last myth, I need to file my FAFSA on October 1st, so I'm eligible for the largest amount of aid. Liz?
No. The answer is no. I mean, schools are they're barely able, that by October 1, we're barely like even in the setup phase. So no, we are aiding students as they go through the process, going through our, we talked about deadlines, it's all that different pieces. And we aid our students in batches. For back of so students who are like in the early decision pool, they need to know earlier than the students who are in the regular decision pool. Students who are in the early action pool, they were eager and they got their application out earlier, and we give them their financial aid earlier. So it's just kind of but you need to know that we don't use up the aid. We actually do a calculation on the yield on the dollars and our expectation on them. So kind of we know that all 4,000 students who apply to St. Anselm aren't coming. So when they apply for aid, we give the aid out and understand that people will make other decisions, and we do that based on years of experience.
Some schools may list a priority deadline, and if they do that, if you do get that in prior to that priority deadline, it means you could be eligible for certain things, right? There are schools that have priority deadlines that if you apply before it, on their end, you may be eligible for work study. If you apply after, you may not be. So it's just a moving field. Like Liz said, a lot of stuff kind of happens behind the scenes there. We just want to recommend doing it as early as possible for all the things that we've already mentioned, right? Doing it early with your applications, doing it early so you have it for your scholarships, your outside scholarships that you're applying for.
And also, if you do it early, if something happens, we have enough time to work on things. I think that this is, like, just because you go through the application doesn't mean that there aren't going to be questions. And when there are questions and we have to get proof of like taxes or something along those lines, we just need to be able to have that back and forth. So if you're doing it early, then we have more time to have the conversation and you're not as panicked about it. So.
Right. All right, so switching over to scholarships. Jill, what's a scholarship?
What is a scholarship? So a scholarship is gift aid, as we said earlier, free money, recognizing perhaps a variety of different aspects, whether it's merit, your academic performance, athletic performance, et cetera, that's going to help you take a bite out of that tuition payment. And I think it's really important to know that there are a variety of scholarship opportunities out there, not just those that you may be reviewed for at the school during your application process, but there are so many opportunities, and we're going to talk about them a little bit more, about where you can search and how you can find scholarships that can meet your specific criteria.
Yeah. You see the second bullet there, do scholarships have to be repaid? Easiest answer is no. Okay, if you are applying to those scholarships, that money is available for you to use towards your educational costs. Okay, Denise, are there scholarships that are renewable for future years?
Oh, absolutely. Those are our favorites, too. The ones that you get to try to repeat. Sometimes those will come in the format of that acceptance letter with your merit aid, saying that if you keep a certain GPA, that then you can have that same scholarship amount for your merit aid throughout the 4 years of your undergrad program. There are also other outside scholarships. You just have to read what that criteria is in terms of if it's a one-time, a one and done, or if it is something that you can apply for every single year. Every scholarship is going to map that out for you. Again, people aren't trying to hide this information. They want students to earn this money. They want to give it away. So it's just really looking at that criteria and making sure if it is renewable, that you're looking at any dates or whatever information it is that they may need. Some scholarships may want you to provide that financial aid information on a year-to-year basis. Some scholarships may want to see your transcript and make sure you're actually doing a good job at your grades and are actually doing what you're going to college to do. So just making sure you're keeping track of those details and those dates so you don't miss, again, a deadline. That's just that D word. It's going to keep coming back to you guys. Because if you do, you may not have a chance to get that scholarship back.
All right.
And they also come at different times of the year.
Yes.
It's important to know. So sometimes you get them at graduation or award your ceremonies that you do. Other times you have to wait for your first semester grades to post, and you would get it second semester. So once you've provided that information, you would do that. So it comes in different ways. Sometimes it goes directly to the student. Not my best preference. So you have to account for the scholarships. And so it'd be fun to be able to go out and buy a little something, but the idea is it's supposed to go towards your education. So anyway, those are different things. But you need to know that those scholarships need to be accounted for in financial aid. So we ask you, when you do the scholarship, and we will do it. So once you say, and most scholarships are made co-payable to the school and the student. And so once that information comes and hits your student account, then it gets accounted for in your financial aid, and your eligibility will be changed because, this year we had a student who had $26,000 in outside scholarships. And
Good for them.
well, we have a cost of attendance, so that you have to reduce. There's just no room. You have to work within the cost of attendance. So just so you know, but any student who ends up with $26,000 is sitting pretty. Just thought I'd tell you in case you didn't know.
And I think that's an important point. As you're talking with colleges and asking questions about scholarships and financial aid, it is important to understand what is the institution's philosophy on outside scholarships, and how will it impact your overall financial aid package? Will the scholarships be able to stand alone? And each school is going to have their own way of dealing with that. So it's a great question to ask.
Yeah.
But you still can't go over the cost of
Well,
attendance.
no, you can't go over the cost
Doesn't
of
matter where you go. You can't go over the cost of attendance. So.
We do recommend that if you do receive an outside scholarship, you normally receive some type of communication saying, hey, Sean, you've received this $2,000 scholarship. That notification should go to the financial aid office at the school you're looking to attend to say, hey, I received this, so that they know, as Elizabeth was saying, they can kind of note it so that if it does change your financial aid, you will be aware of it. Okay, a couple of things you can kind of see up there, different categories of scholarships, right, that you can search for. And there's a lot of different ways to go about that. I always like to recommend talking to your school counselors. Jill, Denise, do you guys have a specific process when it comes to community services, community scholarships, or local scholarships that you do with your students?
We have a process at Goffstown High School. It's actually just started a couple weeks ago, where we opened up our local scholarships for students. We use a program called Naviance for a lot of our communication between our school counseling office and the colleges with transcripts and letters of recommendation. That's also where we house all of our scholarships that are local. So students can really go to one place, find that application and complete it. And it allows them to apply for, I think, 80 some odd scholarships that are just local for our Goffstown and New Boston students. And then outside of that, we always recommend our state scholarships from the New Hampshire Charitable Foundation. Granite Advance now has a scholarship for high school students, which we are thrilled about. So we are certainly looking at those, the Red Sox Foundation, the Fisher Cat. So we're looking at those state scholarships to try to maximize what our students can get. We actually this year, for the first time, did a Free Money Friday event, which was fantastic. We got, we're guessing around 80, 85 students to come down and apply for our local scholarships. That's just good for our community to see that our students want to be a part of that and that they can be recognized for some of the good things that they do. Sean was kind enough to come by and help students with their scholarship application. So it was a really successful day and a great event. So we definitely, and even starting back in the fall when some of those national sites start pushing out those scholarships, the Coca-Cola Scholarship, the Hood Athlete Scholarship, we're certainly letting students know about those as well. So scholarships is sort of a trickle year-round event that when you have time for it, we sort of add it onto the student's plate.
Yeah, and I think for us, we use a different platform. We use SCORE, but we actually keep in our college counseling office a database or spreadsheet list as we hear from local community scholarships. So your school counseling office does sort of become this repository, whether it's the Board of Realtors or the Women's Club or any of these local scholarships, they will notify the school counseling office, and then your school counseling office will share that information in whatever way works best for them. Sometimes it's a bulletin board, sometimes it's email postings, but we find that keeping a live and updated database that's accessible through our student platform is really, really helpful. And again, same scholarships as Denise was mentioning. And then our registrar, God bless her, every time we get a new scholarship, she emails out the senior class and also then adds it to the database and includes the link. So we do try very hard to push out the information to our families.
One thing you do need to kind of be aware of, though, with the scholarships, is not all scholarships ask for the same kind of information. You shouldn't be paying money for the scholarships. No. You should really, and most scholarship organizations have gotten a little more current. Not all are. Some are pretty old in their way of like asking for, parents adjusted gross income and all these sorts of things. So I caution you to look at your personally identifiable information and how much and what they are and that sort of thing. I mean, for me, the Department of Education holds a really high bar. I get to go to prison for the work I do. It's not everyone likes, but I do. And I actually have to say I will. So in order to do the job that I do. So, but part of the thing is that there's an awful lot of important private information that I have to be responsible for. And so with scholarship, it's good to have the scholarships, but it's also just look at them. Look, what are they asking for? Most, like for example, the Charitable Foundation, are only asking for the acknowledgement. What is you've done your FAFSA, and what is the SAI, and so they may ask for the acknowledgement page. They should not be asking for the guts of the FAFSA information, right? That you as parents are acknowledging that you're willing to take IRS data and have it go into the FAFSA, and I, as the director of financial aid, am held to a really high bar to protect that data, and I do. But the scholarship organizations are not in the same way. So, so the Charitable Foundation, for example, they have done a really good job. The New Hampshire Charitable Foundation have done a really good job of trying to keep those pieces together. But I just want you to be thinking about it, right? I think students will often, they're really easy with taking pictures of personally identifiable information and on their phones. Oh God! And sending it. You need to protect data. And people will say, "Well, the email data." I'm like, "Oh my God, don't do that." So just know that you just need to think about ways to protect your data. So I'm just going to say it that way.
And keep in mind too, remember, they don't need to, as Liz mentioned, they don't need to see everything. What they're really trying to figure out is what that student aid index is. So as long as you are capturing that is what they're using for that piece, that financial aid component on a scholarship application. Jill, can you just talk about the process of scholarships? When should they start? Is it worth their time? What should they keep in mind? Tips, tricks that you have for them?
Yeah, so, while I think the vast majority of scholarships tend to open up in January and February of senior year, there are some, like Denise mentioned, that do open up in the fall. Getting a head start and doing some research, there's a variety of different sites that you can use to figure out where might I qualify for? Do I have a certain talent? Am I looking to study a certain program? Do I have a certain GPA? And it's definitely worth making some mindful decisions about which ones you want to pursue. Many times it's also important to note, how many awards are given out? Like, is it one $10,000 scholarship, and are you going to be competing with 50,000 students? The odds may not be very good, but if there are multiple awards, then perhaps, the chances are going to be a little bit higher. Sometimes it's a quick and easy scholarship application, some basic data, maybe your SAI information. Other times they're asking you to maybe provide an essay, maybe to speak to something specific about that scholarship. So the level of work for the particular scholarships can vary, but I love the $26,000 scholarship student. That's amazing.
Well,
but
that was many scholarships.
Yeah,
that was not one.
right, exactly. But if you walk away with $500 here, $1,000 there, $5,000 there, even if they're only 1 year for your first year, that's a great way to help to underwrite some of your costs. So I always think it's definitely worth it. If you are looking at a scholarship and you're like, is this legit? I don't know. Talk to your school counselor, or talk to our friends at Granite Advance, or call up the financial aid office of a school that you've applied to and say, hey, have you guys heard about this? Because again, there's lots of people out there that kind of make things look legit, and they're just not quite. But I think in the grand scheme of things, the amount of time to invest in some of the scholarship applications is well worth it.
And there are a number of search engines too that are legit, right? There's one through the College Board. There's another. So the legitimate scholarship search engines are that.
Yeah. The scholarship search engines that she mentioned are on the board now. Keep in mind, right? You have the national search, as our panelists said. Those are national, right? You could be going up against thousands and thousands of kids. Your local searches are going to be a lot less, right? If it's Goffstown specific, Dairyfield school community specific, it's going to be a lot smaller of a pool, so your chances of winning could be greater, okay? Especially for New Hampshire Charitable, right? New Hampshire Charitable gives away about $8 million a year to students, and they're only for New Hampshire residents, right? So you're not going up against numerous states. It's one state, a lot of opportunity to win some money, okay? Local searches, as we mentioned, start with your school counselors. Websites that they mentioned, talk to your local businesses. If it's if it is a local business, right, they may have a specific smaller one, right, 500, 1,000. As we've stated, right, those add up. They could add up to $26,000, okay? If you have a job, right, check with your employers. I know Market Basket, McDonald's, they offer scholarships to their students, right? The students that are coming in working and attending college. And then parents, check with your employers. You may have scholarships for dependents that you're not even aware of. So I always like to throw that out there. Never hurts to ask. The worst they're going to say is, no, we don't do that. Right.
We've seen actually recently orthodontic practices. So families, if you spend a lot of money on your children's teeth, a lot of times the orthodontist also does a scholarship. Same thing with dentists. Think about the places where you and your family spend your money. A lot of banks and credit unions where you bank also have scholarships that would be only eligible for families who bank with them. So there's lots of ways to find some of these scholarships.
Right. Some of the things you may need when searching for those scholarships or applying to those scholarships listed up on the board, the SAI, showing that financial component. The essay, a lot of essays are going to be specific to the topic that's covered. As our panel mentioned, us at Granite Advance, we have $500,000 to give away this year, and we have 5 different categories, right? We have a first-year student category that was added this year, leadership, community service, academic, and opportunity. Right? They're all a little bit different in nature, but you have the ability to apply for those come next year. You're most likely going to be asked for a transcript. Now, keep in mind, the scholarship may have a minimum scholarship or a GPA requirement, right? You have to have a 2.0 to apply to this. If you're looking for ones that are specific to GPA, right, academic scholarships, there may be a higher GPA need requirement there. And then clubs, organizations, activities, right? People are going to want to know what you do, right? What are you doing outside of the classroom, right? We have a community service application, okay? What are you doing in the community to help those around you, on top of going to school, on top of those things, okay? So these are typically things that they're going to look for in a scholarship application, okay? Tips, right? So when you are starting this process, kind of a lot of things we've already mentioned, start nice and early, right? Get that FAFSA done early so you know that SAI. Start the search, start looking at, as we've mentioned, deadlines, right? Deadlines are going to be important when it comes to scholarship. New Hampshire charitable scholarships for seniors is creeping up really close. Ours is end of May. So they're all going to vary based on the organization that you're using. I always recommend using a new email, right? So I don't want all of the email or all of the scholarship emails coming to my personal email. I'll make an email that says seangoescollege@gmail.com. All of my scholarship things go to that email. And when I'm done applying to emails after 4 years, 5 years, 6 years, I can just delete that email, right? It's one thing that I can check. As we've mentioned, all of the communication that you're going to get from college through admission, through financial aid is going to come to your email, okay? Make sure if you are not an email checker to become an email checker, right? Make sure we're checking it at least once a week, if not twice a week, and start ramping it up because that's how you're going to get all your information, right? You're going to get admission decisions. You're going to get financial aid packages. So make sure we're keeping an eye on emails. Complete the application as best as you can. If you have specific questions, I've gotten a ton of questions to our scholarship already. Okay, don't be afraid to ask the scholarship committee or the scholarship company. I don't know what this means, right? If you need clarification, don't be afraid to ask questions. And that's across the board. That is in college admission, in college financial aid, in the scholarship process. Don't be afraid to ask. We love questions. That's why we're doing this.
We do.
Okay. Make sure that essay is really hitting the question of the scholarship, okay? And again, make sure we are hitting that deadline, okay? Again, if you are awarded a scholarship, make sure you're telling the school, right? Elizabeth doesn't want to go out and give you this financial aid picture and say, woo, we're done with the student. You'd be like, hey, Elizabeth, here's $5,000 from scholarship, right? It's more that she has to do. As soon as you get that information, let the schools know so that they can alter things if they need to, okay? As I mentioned, we do have a scholarship, so next year when you're going through this process, don't be afraid to reach out to us. We will hopefully have more than $500,000 to give away next year. We want to continue to increase that. And then another really great one for all of you to complete is New Hampshire Charitable. As I mentioned, they give out around $8 million a year in scholarship funds. It's only for New Hampshire residents. And they award anything, right? Certificate program, 2-year program, 4-year program, master's degree, okay? A lot of really good money on the table out at New Hampshire Charitable Foundation, all right? I know I kind of went through those last few slides a little quick, but I do want to leave at least 5 minutes for questions if you all have anything that's on your minds.
John, you said we were going to get video. Can we get the
Yep,
slides?
this is recorded, so this will be available on our website in case you want to go back to it and review.
Can we get the slides as well?
I can see if they'll be, I think the slides are in the recording, so it'll all be pieced together. Yep. Yeah.
Could you talk a little bit, you mentioned Pell.
Oh, so just so that everybody in the room can hear, we have a question of what is the Pell Grant? Elizabeth.
The Pell Grant is a calculation. It's a grant that's based on what the family earns. It is there's 3 different categories for Pell. For students whose families don't file taxes, they actually would have a negative SAI, and then they would get the maximum Pell Grant, which is $78.95 this year. And it is also calculated. It's done based on oh, this is way too much information. But it's based on the course. It's based on the credit count, and it's a prorated amount of grant that's done. They've changed everything around. So it's a grant that goes towards your cost of attendance based on the enrollment. So you could be full time, like 16 credits is full time, 12 is full time. If you're taking 10 credits, it's prorated based on 3/4 time. But anyway, it's a calculation that is based on eligibility criteria done through the FAFSA. And that's about the best way I can describe it now. But it's a grant, and it doesn't have to be repaid. In order to continue to get the grant from year to year, the student has to be making satisfactory academic progress. There are pieces of the puzzle that need to happen. But it used to be for low income, and then income that was those families who had numbers in college. Now it's kind of a mix, because it's based on the percentage of where you fall within the poverty level, and it's based on a calculus that's done in that way. So the SAI will tell the student if they appear to be eligible for a Pell Grant, but there's a minimum Pell. Again, there's a lot of moving targets in Pell, but it's based on what happens with the SAI.
Is that what colleges use to determine, is the Pell Grant equal to what the colleges would need for need?
No, the Pell Grant is an entitlement program, and it's done through a calculation. So Pell is done it's put within the construct of various resources that are available. So, for example, if a student is Pell eligible, a new thing that's happened this year is that there's a unique scholarship program that is managed by our state treasurer through the 529 program. It's a piece of it goes into this grant, and it comes in different ways, both as an endowed scholarship and as an annual gift. This year, if a student is a Pell Grant recipient from the state of New Hampshire, they're getting $2,500 additionally of the unique. So there are different companion grants that go with Pell. They've changed the rules each year, so I can't say it's always the same. But anyway, right now, this is what it is. I'm sorry to be so long-winded. It's kind of hard to explain things because it's so different.
When you complete the FAFSA form, it will give you an estimated SAI. And in the confirmation, and you can see out online, they'll give you estimated numbers, right? So it would tell you up front if you are estimated or calculated to receive the Pell Grant, and it would kind of tell you the percentage, as Elizabeth mentioned, as to what you would be eligible to receive. Now, again, that is all estimated until the school is able to review it, and you would see that on your financial aid offer. The other thing that I always like to mention about Pell when it comes to New Hampshire is our New Hampshire program. So if you are a Pell eligible student and you are looking at one of the state universities, so that is UNH, Keene State, or Plymouth State, and you are eligible for the Pell Grant, you are eligible for what's called the Granite Guarantee. That is nothing further that you have to apply for, but that program allows you to go tuition free to those institutions. But again, you are paying and having to pay for room and board. If you are also Pell eligible, looking at a 2-year school, okay, you would have tuition free through the Promise program. All right, so if you are worried about funding your education, you think you may be Pell eligible, you want to have a discussion, obviously we can do that with you. But those are 2 programs that allow you to keep costs down if that's something that you're interested in doing when it comes to your college costs. Any other questions? In the blue back there?
What would you recommend for students planning to take a gap year?
So the question is, what would you say to students who are looking to take a gap year in terms of financial aid? Are you asking, should we be applying for the FAFSA now? Yeah.
You want to take the full year, or do you want to take just part of the year? Because if the plan is to go in the spring, then you might as well do it. Have it all lined up and go for it. If you want to actually go for a full year, you don't need to do the FAFSA until you're going into the cycle where you're going to need it. So it's done. It depends on when you're going into school. Like you could start in the summer, you could start in the fall. You have to kind of tune in to what the school is and what your plan is and what your program is. But if you're going in a traditional calendar, like fall, spring calendar, and you know that you're not going to be going to school next year, then you don't have to do it. But I would say to you, just as an idea, sometimes students change their minds. So you might want to consider going through that process and picking a couple of schools. If you just, all you need is one school, to have it go to one school, and then you can add other schools. Because if you have a change of heart and you want to go to school, you then are set up. But and again, everything is different this year, but it used to be that if you didn't get your FAFSA in by, I think it's March 1 at UNH, you wouldn't be eligible for other institutional aid. So again, it's the deadline piece. So I would hate to think that you get caught out just because you had a change of heart.
A gap year is an amazing thing to do, but we also encourage our students who are looking for a gap year to apply to at least one college and also to do the financial aid process, because again, things could change between the start of senior year and the start of what would be freshman year in college or the start of a gap year. So it's always great to have a backup plan.
Yeah, we would advise the same thing, because you can always defer opportunities for a year if you get accepted to a school, and that gives you that chance to explore that gap year. But if you don't apply, then you don't have any plan, and I don't think that would make anybody's parents very happy. Can you defer?
So the question is, can you defer scholarships as well? Are we talking outside scholarships? Are we talking merit scholarships from the school? Yeah, that's a great question.
So here's what you need to think about. If you're going to go through the process of applying to schools and you say, I love St. A's, I want to come to St. A's, but I want to take a year, you actually commit. You have to actually pay money. You commit, and then your scholarship is held for you. And then, different schools may be different, but that's how we do it. And then when you come back in the following fall, you just need to make sure that you're sort of if things will be held for you, but you still need to keep doing, you got to apply again. You got to do your FAFSA. You got to do all these different things. So you kind of have to, you probably want to engage. You have to engage on a different level because you're out of the normal kind of communication flow, with high school, with your folks right there. They're like, did you do that? Did you do that? None of that stuff. No, you're because you'd be out on your own, doing your own thing, right? So that's a little different.
Again, we want to thank you for coming. If you have questions, just let us know.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.